Welcome to the vCluster YouTube channel. Today I start with a question. What do you do when you have hundreds of Kubernetes clusters? Do you go and create Ingress Controller on each of them, paying additional management layer cost, additional control plane cost, and the cost to run all of those controller again and again, while making sure your maintenance team is managing all of them? Or do you use a solution like vCluster, which is a certified Kubernetes distribution, and create virtual clusters for each of your developers so that they can sync your Ingress controllers back to the virtual cluster and use them without any other complexity? The video today shows you how to do that with help of a simple Google Kubernetes Engine. There is an accompanying blog as well for this, which you can go through, and it has all the steps, like having a prerequisites like if you are using GKE, the Google Cloud SDK, the Kubernetes CLI, a vCluster CLI which you can install it from here, and a domain name. What we have done for this video is we have already set up a Google Kubernetes Engine and it is running, and we will go and install everything over here. So whenever we talk about Ingress, the first thing is the Ingress Controller. The steps to install it is going to the documentation and going to your specific requirement. So as we are using a Google Kubernetes Engine, we need to go and create a cluster admin permissions on the cluster. The step is to copy this command and run it. And as you see, there is a cluster role binding created over here. The next step is to apply the Ingress Controller manifest. We will just do that using this command. And with time you will see a lot of things has been created, including a namespace. So let's investigate the namespace that has been created. You can see there is a Ingress Nginx namespace. Let's investigate what is running over here. So as you see, there has been two completed pods, and the controller is running, but the status will be updated with this new refresh. Now with the Ingress Controller here, we need a Cert-Manager. The Cert-Manager will help you to use and manage certificates. So you should go to the Cert-Manager website and go to the installation page, and then it's very simple. You just copy this command and paste it on your host cluster. Like the Ingress Controller, it will go and install a lot of resources over here. Let's wait for it to complete, and it will also create a namespace called Cert-Manager, and it will have a lot of resources over here, and all of them are running, so good to go. The next step is to provide the information to the Cert-Manager about how your domain, how your certificates, and the endpoint which it will be configured. To do that, we need to find your Ingress endpoint which will be linked to the domain. Let's find that. But the only thing we care about is this external IP, and we will link it to our domain manager and the answer over here, and endpoint wildcard, and then you can just add the record. Once you add the record, your endpoint is configured, but the missing part is SSL certificates. To do that, we need one more step, and the step is to have a cluster issuer. You can go to this example repo which we have linked in the documentation and get all the types of cluster issuer. There is a prod issuer which gives you verified SSLs, and there is a staging one. Choose what you want. Production ones are required whenever you want it to be finalized. Staging ones whenever you want to test it. I've cloned this repo locally and I have everything over here, and we will just use the production SSL Cert-Manager. Make sure you have all those information according to your requirement, and add your original email ID over here, and you can go and apply this cluster issuer. So let's see the directory we are at, and we will just need to apply the Kubernetes cluster issuer prod, and the cluster issuer prod has been created. It will take some time for it to sync and do the checks and everything. If we do cluster issuer, okay, we see the status ready. Now you can do what is, you can deploy all your game applications and everything to test how everything is working. Let's do that. What we have over here is a deployment which uses image and exposes the port 80, a service which exposes it to the endpoint, and the ingress which configures everything for the subdomain and make sure that you use the secret that is issued by the cluster issuer prod. Now we will deploy each of them one by one. The first is game deployment. The second is game service, and the third is game ingress. And we have deployed everything right now over here. Now if we see the kubectl get ingress, we will see it's running and it's on port 443. Let's go and check if it's working as expectedly or not. So we will just open an incognito tab and go, and as you see there is a valid certificate, and it's using Let's Encrypt with the public key and the certificate over here. So it is working. And if you want to check one more funny thing, it is that if you check the network sources again, it is through our endpoint which we have created at the start. So both are the same. Now the goal is to have a virtual cluster for each of your developers. So we have a vCluster YAML over here which does the same. Now we need to create a vCluster, and you do it using vCluster create the name of the virtual cluster, for example test -5 vCluster YAML, and it will use and create a virtual cluster for you. Now the good part is, whenever you have a new virtual cluster, and if you sync Ingress and Ingress Controller as you're doing over here, so you're syncing the Ingress classes from the host to the virtual cluster, and ingresses from the virtual cluster to the host, you can deploy all those things again, and what you will see is your application will have all those ingress and everything working perfectly. Let's just change the following deployment a bit so that we have a new endpoint. Let's make it game 1 to game, and the host as well, and the services are all good. Now we see the virtual cluster pods are being initialized, and once the initialization has been done, what we will do is we will go inside of the virtual cluster, and after going inside of the virtual cluster, we will run all of those things again. And with that, what you will find is your application is running smoothly with all those ingress and everything configured. Now as you see, the virtual cluster is creating a proxy container to connect with the virtual cluster. Let's wait for it to be done. And as you can see, your ports are being forwarded. Now if we do kubectl get namespace and everything, we are inside the virtual cluster context. If we check the nodes, we have created and synced one of the nodes to there. And now what we will do is we will go and create all of those resources over here again. So let's do kubectl apply -m game deployment, kubectl apply minus f game service kubectl apply minus f game ingress. With that, what you will find is all of those things are deployed, and if we check kubectl get ingress, a new host game.hrittik.live is here. Now when we test this out, you will see virtual cluster has synced all of those ingresses and cert-manager requirements. So if you open this, it will be a perfect SSL, and with that, all of your teams who are using a similar approach can be benefited. So let's see that. We will just open an incognito tab and go here, and as you see, it is working perfectly. There is a game.hrittik.live and there is a game1.hrittik.live. This is running on your host cluster. This is running on your virtual cluster, and it is working perfectly. For teams of hundreds of using virtual cluster, this is a perfect approach. Now we will close all of this, and if you want to delete your virtual cluster, it is as simple as vCluster delete test, and it will kill everything. And now if you go back to your Chrome and go to game.hrittik.live, it's killed. So you have a perfect life cycle for everything. And with that, this video comes to an end. And thank you so much for again watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you have any doubts, feel free to join our Slack.